Eden Koz here with Just Be, and we are about to take a spiritual boom. We are at an unprecedented time in human history where we are transitioning from 3D to 5D within the great spiritual awakening. This video and audio podcast is the place for you to find your truth beyond politics, your sovereignty, your voice. Let's kick up your vibration now. By the way, each episode ends with the Just Be practice to do just that. And as we begin the show, just to know a little bit more about me, I'm a soul realignment specialist, meditation master, and dimensional healer. Learn more, and there's merch also at EdenJustBe.com. Let's get this party started. Eden, Just Be, Spiritual Boom in association with the powerful Truth-Telling Grassroots Warriors Network. And in terms of powerful, welcome Kara Goodwin, live from Indiana.
Thank you so much for having me, Eden. I've really been looking forward to this.
Okay, and I say live knowing that the show will not be aired for 2 weeks, just for Kara to know that as well, because we are going to talk, I do want to talk a little bit about Charlie Kirk today. And I always say what we may talk about, probably. We'll talk about extraterrestrial beings, close encounters. It's so interesting with you career-wise coming from an IT world, because I came from a advertising world. And I can even tell when I watched you on other shows that your mindset and how you, because we are one of the big commonalities that you and I have is meditation, that we approach things differently. So it will be so nice to have your perspective on that. Okay, so we may talk about starseeds and, of course, meditation as well. So before we begin, I just want to bring up again about Gold IRA scam. So my episode that was published on September 7th, and I actually don't have an episode number, which would be a couple weeks ago from here. So I'm going to talk about this a lot. So I have been personally involved in an IRA scam, and Kevin and Andy from Miles Franklin come on my show and talk about it. And potentially Tucker Carlson's going to be doing a show about this because it's big stuff. And there are a lot of really big companies out there that are encouraging it. And I'm not going to name names, but probably a lot of them, and a lot of patriots and truth tellers are affiliates, recommend these companies. No. Yet, I must say, Kara, and I announced this on my last show, because I record every week, but I recorded with him on Saturday, so it's only been a couple days. So there were two companies that I utilized, and I just liquidated. I just got out of it. Yet, in a typical IRA, 8% is really fabulous. I gained, even with these companies that are not so great, 24% in 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So imagine, I divorced my husband 5 years ago. He would have thought that I was crazy because I did my RA in tears. I didn't go, everything's going to go with the gold company and precious metals. I did it over time. Yet I just, in my gut, it was like, it was good. And because of this happening to me, it is so good. I wouldn't have researched. I wouldn't have realized how many gains that I had. I mean, so now that and with Miles Franklin, they do not care if you go with them. They are on a humanitarian mission to knock this out. So let me say that. So investing, I would say, if you're going to go with anyone, Miles Franklin, they talked a really good game on the podcast, but just because Kevin is working with me, so I see it. I don't just hear it, I see it. So contact them, info@milesfranklin.com, and please put Eden in the subject line because they know that you are coming from me. I have a personal relationship. This isn't just me talking about them. It is really a great investment. Obviously, I had so much faith in God after the divorce that, because when you get divorced, you split everything. So you have potentially this nest egg that you've worked so long and hard to do. And in the divorce, I knew I would, in a sense, be starting over to a degree. So I also, with the Great Awakening, feel that it's all going to be good anyway. Yet I got to see in front of my face this abundance that I had faith in and believed would be happening to me. I got to see it right in front of my face. So it was one of those moments that I was just like, oh my gosh, I know God has my back, is there, but this was just, it's one thing. It's great to have faith. And then it's great also when it's right there. So good. So, Miles Franklin, I think investing in precious metals is such a great way to go. And yeah, so I would encourage that as well. So if you want somewhere to invest that you trust, they're great. I think they're great. And it's so neat doing this podcast, Kara, because I know you do one as well. We're going to get that in a minute. I would not have met them. It's so neat how the connection here went to them and how it was just beautiful.
So
So
divine.
it is so divine. And knowing
Yeah.
that God has my back, and even if I make a misstep, it's not really a misstep. Because at first, when you hear the word, that you were scammed, how could I be taken advantage of? Yet I'm not taken advantage of because I did it. I put action towards it. And it turns out it was a really awesome thing. Okay, and one more thing, and we'll get to your bio. Through this great awakening process, and we are going to talk about this today, I have become this speaker of things. I do not quiet down. I do not yeah, how are you with that? Are you pretty loudmouth?
That's such an interesting question. And I think
Oh,
it depends who you ask, right? Because I don't
ah,
feel like I am, but I I I won't say what I don't think. You know what I
okay.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I won't just appease somebody, but I won't necessarily just come right out and challenge somebody. I can see, like you're talking about the Great Awakening. So many people are on so many different levels. I just actually saw one of the first things I saw. Shame on me for going on to Instagram as soon as I woke up. I mean, I was like barely wiping the sleep out of my eyes, and I had a notification that had popped up, and I was like, "Let's see what this is." And
Oh,
then I
geez.
pressed on somebody's story, and it was this like, "Let's just be clear: autism did not come from vaccines." But anyway, I'm saying
Yeah.
too many keywords if you want to have this
Oh no,
on.
say what this is everything. Go for it.
Okay, and so I just felt this like it just flew in the face of my whole structure now, and everything that I've come to understand and the research that I've done and all of this. And it wasn't directed at me, but it
Yeah.
was this stark contrast of like, oh my God, I remember when I thought that. And I every part of me was like, that's so like you're like wake up, wake up, wake up. And I mean, I thought in my head, I entertained these like gentle ways that I might be able to push back on that. And then ultimately it just came down to, you know what? Like it doesn't matter what I would say. It's they're not there. They're not there yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I would have been able to have, and especially if they're feeling combative, which they were feeling defensive, clearly to have put not toward me as far as I know. I mean, but I just happened to see it. I just
Yeah.
consumed it. It wasn't directed at me. But so I'm very aware that like we have so many different realities right now, and I do see things happening behind the scenes that I think a lot of people aren't ready to make those connections yet. And there is like there's a psyche component to that of like, you know, we also need to trust when people are guided to that awakening within themselves. And I don't want to take it personally, and I don't want to, upset a relationship of somebody that I mean, I love this person. And, so anyway, when the door is open, I will like probably overshare. I could tell that I was doing this last night when somebody talked about a podcast I'd put out, and she was like, "You just blew my mind, and you were talking about this and this," and they had no frame of reference. And I could tell that I was just like, like, okay, well, let me just try to fit as many words in as I can that probably mean nothing to you in a short time. So it's just it's a dance. And
Yes.
I don't think many people would say that I just, am really forceful, but I do feel more of an urgency happening as things are becoming more apparent. Again, going back to that great awakening, I feel like this change happening within me of like be a little like push a little more because it's happening under the surface. Things are breaking apart and people may not see it yet, but it's like I feel that more exposure is necessary. because, it's like if you really are locked into this
Yeah.
mainstream mentality, you're potentially in for quite a shock over the coming years. So I don't know if that answers your question.
That does. Okay, so yeah, I would say like the truth, yet meeting someone with heart. It's a challenge to do, yet I will not back down from the truth. And I think questions are an excellent way to help someone. Because I mean, even this podcast, I've been doing this for a while now. It's not to wake people up. It's just to have conversations, to share where I am, to share where you are, and whoever's interested is just gonna come. So let's take that and go right into your bio, and we'll talk more about this too. So, Kara Goodwin is the host of Soul Elevation Podcast, where she explores ascension, spiritual awakening, energy healing, extraterrestrial connections, and consciousness. As a skilled energy healer and meditation guide, Kara empowers others to deepen their spiritual connection through transformative practices. Her debut book, Your Authentic Awakening, A Guide to Everyday Spiritual Living, provides a roadmap to embracing a spiritually awakened and authentic life. Isn't that so funny? Authentic is like, authentic life. Through her work, Kara inspires others to elevate their souls and align with their highest potential. Okay, I want to start out talking about your awakening because I know you were living in Italy at the time, and all. And I'm going to preface it a little bit. You were in the IT world, but yet you got a chance to be with your two kids, and all this death and hurt started happening to you. So I want to know about that, and then how you started to know also about the Great Awakening, the movement from 3D to 5D. All right, you go.
Okay. So, yes, as you mentioned, I spent many years in IT and I was, just a regular mainstream mentality, mainstream lifestyle, kind of ticked all the boxes of, you know, higher education and getting the corporate job and having the kids and all of
Yeah.
these, regular things. and
Hmm.
and I did feel like the faster my career went while my kids were young, there was like this struggle within me of like, wanting to be respectful to my employers and do the right thing by them, but also like heartbreak that I was in this machine. I didn't see it that way, but just like, shouldn't I be with these beings that I created? Like I'm farming this out and I had them because I wanted to be with them. But my husband got a chance for us to move abroad to Italy, as you mentioned, and that's when it was a great opportunity to step away because I call it the golden handcuffs. It was like I could
Yeah.
tell like what I really, really wanted was to be with my kids. But my career, like I was just getting all the support from my company because they wanted to champion working mothers and so they
Oh,
were really trying to make
jeez.
things work, and
Yeah.
so it's a good problem to have, but it's hard to step away from it when it's like, well, really, like if I just ask, can I leave early? All these things, like they just wanted to work with me on things. So
Ow.
it was hard to step away, but this
Yeah.
opportunity, it was like, A, we get to live in Italy. B, I can, this is a great excuse to live the life that I actually had wanted. Um,
Okay. And were you in Indiana before that?
yes.
So
Uh-huh.
what a big step. What do you mind me asking what city in Indiana was it?
I live in Carmel, Indiana.
Okay. A Carmel. Is that a larger or mid-size
It's
city?
just north of Indianapolis, so it's part of
Okay.
Indianapolis metro area, but it's
Got
its
it.
own city and it's a small city.
Okay.
So not
So,
like skyscrapers.
okay. So from that life in Indiana to Italy. All right. And your company was basically like, "Hey, Kara, we'll do what you need to do and we want to be there for you." And just so it made it kind of an easy way to break free in a
Right.
sense. Okay. All right.
Yes, yeah. And I had lived in England for 4 years in my
Oh my
20s,
gosh.
so
Okay.
I wasn't, my eyes were open to to international living, but it's still, I didn't have kids when I moved to England. When
Got
I
it.
moved to Italy, I had two small kids, so it was a big adjustment.
Wow.
But I loved it. We were there for 4 years, and The first 2 years, I really just leaned into that Mediterranean lifestyle.
Oh,
You know, it
wow.
was like I made some great friends and we'd drop the kids off at school and have our cappuccino. And, I was taking yoga classes and
Ah,
I would go running and so it was really a beautiful, it was hard to, it is hard to live in another country, to be a foreigner and to not really have the language down as
yeah.
fluently. Sometimes you get taken advantage of and things like that.
Oh, man.
Um, but so we were there for 2 years when the other shoe dropped, if we want to think of it that way, because that's really when, I the illusion of the the reality that I was living just came crashing down because I had, in a very short time, in 7 months, as you mentioned, death, terrible, like really intensive surgeries,
And
acts really close to my family. So if you think of like my family with my husband and my two kids, then one level out. So like my parents and siblings and his parents and siblings, all of this is happening at that layer. Um, and it started with the death of my sister-in-law, who was one of my best friends. And it was like 3 weeks before her wedding, and she had two little kids. And so that was just tragic,
and that
traumatic.
that was a suicide, correctly?
It
Or
was a
correct?
suicide, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
2 weeks before her wedding. And
3 weeks,
oh,
yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah. 3 weeks before her wedding.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we knew that
Oh,
she was sick, but we did not, it's still very shocking
yeah.
when it, actually comes to fruition. And so that was very, very hard.
Jeez.
And so just in the order of events, then my our dog died 3 weeks, or about, yeah, a couple weeks after that. Then my stepdad, his health was declining really rapidly, and he ended up having spinal stenosis and having surgery on his brain stem, which, anytime you're dealing with that part of the anatomy, it's very touchy and vulnerable
Yep.
area. Luckily, he is
I've had
doing well
that.
now. You
Hmm.
have that?
Oh, yeah.
Uh, have you had surgery for it?
It's a long story, but near death experience, crazy infection, had two
Oh,
craniotomies, same
oh my
thing.
gosh.
Doctors
Wow.
basically said, we don't know. We're going to do the surgery on your brain. We don't know if you're going to be able to walk again, but this is all we
Exactly.
can, yeah, this is all we can think of to do right now. Okay. But there's nothing
Wow.
else. So, yeah. So, yeah, completely,
Oh my gosh.
completely
So yeah,
understand that.
it's like, yeah, everybody's keeping everything crossed. Like, please come out of
Yes.
this okay. And then my mother-in-law was hit by a motorbike as she crossed the street. So, grieving the death of her daughter, and then she gets wiped out by a motorbike. And then my stepmom had been dealing with heart disease for many years and had been managing it like a rock star with diet and exercise. And she was like this marvel at the hospital, where they'd have like seminars and she'd be like one of the featured, they'd talk about her like, and as this inspirational story. But she ended up getting very sick very fast. And there was always sort of a time, it was always kind of like, you're not going to be able to manage this forever like this. Something will have to come to pass. Anyway, she ended up in the ICU, top of the heart transplant list, and she had a heart transplant. That's what saved her. But, I'm sure that everybody listening understands that's a very, very serious operation.
Yeah.
So all of that is happening again within 7 months, and we're in Italy. My family's here in the US, my husband's family's in England. And so we also can't really like process it and mourn it with everybody. We're getting all the
Yeah.
information kind of secondhand. And it just added kind of another layer of grief with everything that was going on.
And how old were your kids too?
Uh, let's see. I think they were like 9 and 6 sort
Okay,
of
that's a
ages.
busy age too. Then to have
Yeah,
all that going on top of raising two younger kids.
right.
Wow.
So through that, at that point, again, I think I was always like spiritually curious from the time I was little. Um, but I had even tried meditation, but I hadn't been able to really get anywhere with it. I
Yeah.
was trying it more out of curiosity before all of this happened. I would, every once in a while, I'd get inspired by something I read, and I'd be like, I'm going to start this great practice of meditation. And I'd have no idea what I was doing, and I would get nothing from it, and I'd stop doing it pretty much as soon as I started, you know? And but through this, I eventually I remember having this conversation in my head as I was dropping the kids off, coming back from dropping the kids off at school, and I was like, you know, talking to this God that I didn't know if he knew who I was. I think I believed in him or
Okay, so
her,
yeah,
you
did
know.
you grow up with faith? Were you in the church, or how
I
how did your
kind of like, we went to church sometimes, but we
Okay.
weren't like, you know, we weren't regular members, or
Okay.
it was this kind of fuzzy, like I had some exposure to it, but
Okay.
it wasn't like we were one of those families who kept up with it. You
Okay.
know what I mean? But I was always interested in like the true stories of angel interventions or near-death experiences or any of that stuff always caught my attention. More of like the real life, less biblical,
Yeah.
um, but like the stories of the people in our age who were having these sorts of experiences. But I kind of was having this conversation with God, which I used to do when I was little. I used to talk to God in my head, and but then I stopped because I thought that I
I want
could
to ask
have
you a
it.
question. When you were
Hmm.
having a conversation with God, was it just you talking, or did it feel like there was interaction
It was
within that?
one way, so it was
Okay.
really just me saying my
Okay.
piece, you know,
Okay. Yeah.
my pleas. But I was kind of saying, you know, I really feel that my life has just shattered, and I need some guidance here. You know, what's the best path forward for me? How can I make use of what has happened? And I really have been drawn to meditation. You know, I've tried meditation, but um, I haven't gotten anywhere with it. So if that's the right thing, that feels like the right direction for me. But if it is, can you help me open a door for me? Let me find a teacher because I'm not getting anywhere with it on my own. And
Yeah.
let it be in English because I actually had been to a couple of meditation gatherings that they were in Italian, and that was too hard, you know, to try to translate everything.
Yeah.
And and then I kind of, you know, just let it be that. And then it's in hindsight that I recognize how quickly things happened from that point. How, you know, the right person directed me to the right documentary that directed me to the right teacher for that time, that directed me to the right methods, and all of this so that I could start to explore meditation in a way that I could stick with this practice and start to get something from it. And that ultimately led to my spiritual
Yeah.
hunger and thirst. I really started meditation from a secular, just like nervous system calming, like wanting to feel better, wanting to use it as a tool to just feel better. And I didn't really want to go into the spiritual aspect in the beginning. And then, you know, but that was the gateway that opened me up to that connection.
Can you imagine it not happening? Like, to me, if someone doesn't want to go there and they just want to do meditation from a practical standpoint, that to me, I don't know how that's possible,
Yeah.
because whether you want to or not, it just starts opening up doors and windows, because I believe it is your connection to source and to God. And when you quiet yourself and let yourself expand into all that is, that how and it's so, like, when you sit by yourself, it is, well, meditation itself, when you talked about trying it on your own, it is, I tell folks that come to me, it is probably one of the hardest things that you're going to try to do. But once you get into it, and as you start to experience it, you cannot really live without it, especially in the times that we're going through right now, to have that balance and to have that knowing that everything's going to be okay. Wow. Okay. So, same thing happened to me, that I was guided. It wasn't, I was off balance. This happened in my late 20s, really off balance. And somehow beautifully, I was guided to my meditation teacher, who was also not some, woohoo person. She was this masterful PhD, former psychologist. I mean, that's who I started with. And I didn't really do any searching. I didn't really care that she even did meditation. I was just looking for something to help bring calm. And when my two friends said she was great, I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And that changed my viewpoint, my world, my life. So where where did you go from there? Did you, knowing that you now have a spiritual business, how what were the steps after that?
So it slowly, like you're talking about, the
Yeah.
spiritual aspect started to come, and that really was through it was an authentic awakening. I wasn't looking for it,
Yep.
but certain things were starting to happen, just like what you're saying, where even if you come at it from a secular standpoint and your intentions are, I just need to feel calmer, I just need to have some stability.
I just need to feel good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Certain experiences like having my eyes closed, but perceiving light, like visible light, but visible without my eyes being open,
Yeah.
descending from above and filling my body, and actually seeing and perceiving that, and it feeling so visceral that it made me cry, in meditation. And then not having any frame of reference for what just happened, no language for what just happened,
Yeah.
and no, just it was a beyond my five senses, because like I said, my eyes were closed, but I was seeing it. I was
Yeah.
having other experiences. I mean, this was most of the time I was not having clairvoyant experiences or claircognizant or any of that, but most of the time I was just following the protocol, and then I would feel calmer and so forth. But, another example of this, the unexplainable happening, was it with my eyes closed in meditation, seeing this spiraling, rotating galaxy. And it was as though I was looking into the center of my brain and I'm just seeing this rotating galaxy. And I was so confused by that. I had no idea why I would see that. It was clearly a rotating galaxy. I mean,
Yeah.
even though I wasn't into sci-fi movies, I've seen enough just being a human to be like, well, that's what that is. It's, but I'm like, I'm not the type of person that watches NASA stuff. I don't, I
Oh,
didn't
that's
feel
good.
any sort of connection to the stars. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know a star
Yeah.
seed was a thing. I didn't know that ETs had anything to do with, spiritual growth or any of this. It was so unusual, but it was undeniable. I'm like, I have no reason to think that would to expect it to happen, and then
Yeah.
no frame of reference for when it does happen. So there were things like that.
Okay, can you tell me
That
how long ago was this for you?
so this would have been 2017, so about 8 years ago.
Okay.
So there were just those kinds of things. And I was actually learning meditation from monks who were teaching the method of Paramhansa Yogananda, who is the author of Autobiography of a Yogi.
Hmm.
And so they were very spiritual. And I think that was one of the reasons that I was kind of keeping that at bay, because the spirituality that they were inviting me to explore was really unfamiliar to me. And I was open-minded, but I also was like, well, I don't know these names. I don't necessarily want to just hand over my trust to these beings I don't know.
Hmm.
And so I was being encouraged to explore my spiritual side, but it was something that I was kind of holding back. And so really just through my own volition, through my own experiences of those little things, I was opening more and more. And I still had a lot of exposure to it from the monks and the teachings that I was learning, even though again I was drawn more to like the energy side. I wanted to know, because that was a lot more, it felt like cause and effect. If you breathe like this, your energy does this, your mind does this, and relating to the body as an energy system and things like that, I was really drawn to. So it really was kind of over time and just through kind of community, connecting with more people within that group
Yeah.
that and seeing that other people were kind of trusting it a little bit more. That was like my first sort of step out of traditional religion that I'd been exposed to growing up, that, everybody in my town was more or less, exposed to the
Yeah.
same stuff. So it was really more of like a yogic Hindu kind of, but there was also Christianity as a part of that, because the Yogananda taught a lot about Jesus as well. Um, and that lasted for maybe 2 years or maybe a little bit more than 2 years. And then,
So did y'all meet weekly kind of a thing, or what was the practice like?
so it was an online group, and I
Okay.
was part of this online. In fact, I even like taught sometimes. Like I got to the point where I was doing some of the meditations and sat
Yeah.
songs. Um, and it was at least weekly. Different teachers would offer different things, and I would just participate in different
Neat.
things. And and that was a great first step. But I could tell as I was getting deeper into it that from a lot of people's perspective who'd been there for a very long time, that was also the last step. It was like, this is it. This is these are all the teachings that you need to reach samadhi or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. Everything that we need has been given to us. You don't need to look at anything else. There were things that
Oh.
were catching my attention, like the Enneagram. I remember asking one of the elders, they don't call themselves that, but that would be an appropriate somebody who had been there for decades and decades. And
Mhm.
I was like, "What do you think about the Enneagram?" And he was like, "Oh, I've heard of it, but Master didn't teach it, so I have to wonder about whether it's helpful or not, or if it's necessary."
Wow. Whoa. Okay, that's really interesting.
Right. And so I
Whoa.
started to come up against some things like that and
Yeah.
I just took that for what it was at the time, where it's like,
Sure.
oh, okay, I shouldn't like be
Ooh.
interested in Reiki or interested in these other things because, this person who died in 1952, when these things, maybe didn't even exist or weren't prominent, um, I trusted that. And then slowly,
Yeah.
well, it depends how slowly things happen. People get caught in things for a lot longer than that, but it did start to dawn on me like, okay, I think there is more outside of this, and I don't want to be afraid of it,
Yeah.
and I want to explore it. And I had also, even more than that, I had felt that there was so much rehashing, and we can keep taking the same tool and applying it to new things that show
Mhm.
up in our lives, and we can understand it in more depth.
Right.
There is value in that. So I don't want to like dismiss that,
Mhm.
but it was one of those things, like every time I went to a talk, because I'd read a ton of the books from this organization and been to a lot of the talks, and somebody would take this anecdote that I was very, very, very familiar with by that point, and they would tell the story, tell the anecdote, and then apply it to what they had been going through. And again, it's not that it was not valuable, but it got to the point where it was like, okay, all they had to do was like start with one sentence, and I knew where things were going. And I was like, this isn't quenching my thirst anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just on a hamster wheel
Yeah.
trying to get, trying to get more, trying to quench my thirst, but it's not happening now. So
Yeah. Very repetitive and how you described it too, a little restrictive as well.
yes,
All right. So what'd
yeah.
you do next?
So I left that organization and started exploring more things. And I had been to Sedona actually with my family, and by this time we're back in the US. And I'd gone on this spiritual vortex tour. And so this is where a guide takes you to these different sites and does some interesting things where the wind starts to respond, and you start feeling things and being encouraged to feel the energy of the tree when you're not actually touching it and all of these things. And ended up inviting the tour guide on my podcast just to do it like we are over Zoom. And he ended up becoming my spiritual mentor for a few years.
Man.
And he had this shamanic background, and he actually in an engineering background. I write about him a lot in the book, but he opened up a lot more and had I just and also I was just attracted to other things that I felt this because I wasn't part of an organization. I had this freedom to be like, ooh, somebody's mentioning this and I want to look into that more. And it was more of a like just follow your joy type of thing. And so I became trained in Reiki and doing energy healing. I eventually started to explore sacred geometry. That's become a an important part of my practice and my joy. Um, and I just really started to get out of the dogma, that because even though that organization would
Yeah.
talk about like there's no religious dogma here, it was like the more you actually looked at it, it was like, wow, there is a lot of dogma though.
Yes, that's what it sounds like. You can do this, but don't look at that. Don't do
Right.
that or don't explore that. So how did this, okay, I want to know when and why you started your podcast because that's interesting. Yeah, when did you start seeing more about the matrix? I'm gonna clear my throat for a second.
Mhm.
The truth of the world because there are a lot of people that are spiritual like in my community yet they do not see the enslavement the fake news that there's so much within our world that isn't truth. Okay,
Yeah.
when did that come to you?
That's relatively new is in
Okay.
terms of my full journey. So I started the podcast back in 2018 and it was originally called The Meditation Conversation.
Okay,
So
so it's just a year after you had started meditating.
well, I had started meditating, I think back in 2016, but
Okay.
whatever story I was telling at that time was more like as I'd been in the organization for a little bit longer.
Okay.
So it was the end of 2018 that the podcast
Wow.
started.
Got
And
it.
I had a co-host, and she was in Sweden, and we had met through this organization that I was talking about. And so it was really a meditation focused
Yeah.
podcast. And then after, I don't know, a couple of years or a year and a half, she had to step away. And then I started doing more interview style and focusing less and less on meditation. And so and it took me a long time to change the name to Soul Elevation. But the, for a long time in my spiritual journey, I was very much a love and light person, where it was
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, where I didn't want, I was of the belief that if I didn't engage with the darkness, then I wasn't feeding it. I wasn't giving it energy. So just focus on the love and light. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And that it did serve me for the time that it did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know how long it's been since I've started. It's probably been like maybe 4 years or so since I've started to kind of accept that there is some nefarious stuff going on behind the scenes. It was stuff that I didn't even want to believe it. And then once I did
Right.
accept it, I didn't want to engage with it. And to be honest, I have to still watch myself now because it is enticing. There is something about uncovering this deception and feeling like you're getting smarter and that you're going to maybe like learn how to trick the system or something that can really grip you. And I have to be really mindful about going down the rabbit holes and like it's sucking me in,
Yes.
because it can be so easy to feel disempowered. The deeper I get into that stuff, the more it starts to feel like the deck is stacked against me. So I have to kind of make the choice to say, okay, that can still, it's not that that stuff is not true, but the ultimate truth is that I am consciousness, and the limits that I have are the limits that I put on myself that I'm either agreeing to at the subconscious level or even consciously. And so it's this dance, right, of
Yes.
with the shadow, whether it be the personal shadow or the collective shadow, because it's the same thing with my own personal shadows, where for a long time it's like just focus on the good, focus on the good. And then it's if I would feel the darker things, whether that be the anger or the sadness or, really just feeling some sort of dissonance, some dissonant resonance with something, feeling like doing that spiritual bypassing, or it's like, nope, I don't feel that. It's, I'm above that, or whatever it might be, or the memories that come back that are painful memories that creep in. I had one this at the beginning of the year that crept in from 30 years ago that I had completely forgotten about. And I was gobsmacked that I had forgotten it because it was such a big deal when it happened. And then I recognized that my initial response at the moment I remembered it was
Can you
put
tell
that
us
back where it
what it
came up.
was?
It was just, it wasn't like big T trauma. It was as a teenager,
Mhm.
um, my friend had a surprise party and other friends of mine were organizing it, and I didn't get invited, and that was heartbreaking enough. But then we ran into her and her mom on the night of the party when her mom was taking her to distract her. And I asked my mom to take me to the mall to get her a present because she was my friend
Oh my
still, and I was still going to get
God.
her a present even though I wasn't going to the party.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to Jennifer, my friend, and the moms were talking to each other. And so the other mom assumed I was going and told my mom about the party and was like, "Well, you guys better get going or we're going to beat you there." And so then my mom, as we separated, she was like, "Why didn't you tell me about the party?" And I said, "Because I wasn't invited." And I
Oh
burst into
man.
tears. And that was the
Yeah.
last time I talked about it. And I think probably, I think it came up at some point because I do remember a little bit like, I don't remember if she apologized to me later,
Mhm.
like, because it wasn't her fault. She didn't know it was happening. Or if the mom apologized to my mom or something. Somehow I heard that she got upset with the people who organized it because anyway, so I know I did somehow it came up again in a short time, but
Yeah.
I completely buried it.
Yeah.
And as soon as it showed up again, all that hurt, all that shame, all that, separation, the embarrassment, all of those things that were the reason that I wouldn't think about it when it happened,
Hmm.
they just show up as like, remember this? And it was like, no, go back to where you came from. I don't think about that. And then recognizing what I was doing, like I saw myself doing that right away. And then I was like, wait a minute, come back here. What do you want to tell me? You know,
Yeah.
let me feel what that felt. Let me because the way that I see it now is that that is a part of me that got frozen. That is energy that is part of my energy field.
Hmm.
And it was frozen because I wouldn't look at it, I wouldn't see it. And there was this, if you want to go into internal family systems, there's a protective part of me that was dominating and saying, like, nope, you're better off not looking at it. Look over there. You feel better if you're not thinking about that, which is very thoughtful. But it's
Right.
also like, but there's something here for me, and so I want that energy. I want all of me. I want it all to be flowing, and I want to remember those. I want to know what it's like to be on that side of it to help me to be kinder to people if I see somebody who potentially could be put in that position because of my actions, and there are gifts in there, and to recognize that actually I am safe. I did get through that. It's okay for me
Yeah.
to think of it. I still am safe. It doesn't define who I am. It's something that everybody goes through. And um, But when we're in it, and so it really was this like, okay, no, no, you come in here too. You come in here too. You are worthy. Get in here,
Hmm.
And then that can be it can be part of the flowing energy instead of being that stagnant, frozen, doesn't get past age 14. It's like, come in here and give me your gifts and we'll get it all going. And so that's on the individual level. That's just one example.
Hmm.
But then we have this happening at the collective level too. And so it's the same kind of thing where for a long time it was like, nope, don't look at that. Don't look at that. That's not good for you. You won't feel good doing that. And it's this willingness to say, okay, I am willing, I am ready now to understand things in a bigger way, see more of the pieces that are playing, understand it a little bit differently, and to recognize also the part of me that feels disempowered by it. And so, what do we do about that? How do we keep reminding ourselves that the limits that we have are the ones that we put within ourselves, the ones that we buy into? And at the end of the day, no matter what happens with any like shadow government or the way that the government goes or the way that the secret whatever is happening, um, they ultimately it comes down to our ability to really be ourselves
Yeah.
and to recognize we who do we um what's the word I'm looking for? Who do we call to? Who do we answer to? Who do we answer to? And I answer to my higher self. I answer to my heart. I answer to that's my authority. And so the willingness to, if things really went into a dystopian future, what does that mean in terms of, no, I don't answer to the authority. No, that is not right. And I answer to my own guidance and my own intuition and cultivating that and letting that be the guiding light and
Yeah.
not looking to the authorities to save me and not looking to
Yes.
the authorities to blame for the the issues, the darkness in my own life, understanding that they only have the power that I give them. So it's a
There you
work in
go.
progress.
And I do want to go into Charlie Kirk just quickly because I also want to talk about ETs with you. So again, I feel this is a human ascension that all of this happening to us, or however you want to say it, is just a mirror. So I feel it is important to know what is going on, but to also be calm about it, to be as neutral as possible. Okay. So for me, it's really interesting too. So I live in Ohio right now. I'm from Georgia. So in talking about using my voice, I have a US civil peace flag in the front of my house, which you can get this at Walmart. It's the standard flag that is posted is a wartime flag, and this is a peace flag, basically a sovereignty flag. And I remember when I was getting ready to put it up, one friend of mine said, "Ooh, be careful with that, Eden. Who knows what's going to happen to your house?" And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put it out there, and if people have questions, they can come and ask me because it's not not that it's really good. So I'm probably going to put this up again. I had a sign out in front of my yard. And again, my studio is at my house. So I have a whole bunch of different thoughts that are people that come liberals, conservatives, all of that. So I always talk about the Great Awakening, but I frame it in ways they can understand. So if they're more on the liberal side, we're going through this 3D to 5D energetic astounding. I can talk the talk, but I talk that with everybody. But I did have a sign that I made that said Trump Matrix Breaker. That was so fun that I put out in front of my house because essentially it also doesn't matter what you think of him. If you think he's good, if you think he's evil, whatever, he is breaking up the system. And again, it's not to follow him. Again, there aren't leaders that, you need to put all your faith in this leader. Again, put it all faith in you. Yet to also recognize there are these things that are going on. And then I also have to say, Kara, I have on my car the Don't Tread on Me sticker. And then I have on the opposite side a heart with a peace sign through it. And my one daughter at college, when I had the Don't Tread on Me, she's like, Mom, can you take that off your car at college? And I was like, do you know what that means actually? Because there's so much propaganda that's put. I said, that just means you don't believe in big government. That's it. So it's been really interesting through this process to watch my voice come out. And anyway, for Charlie Kirk, that has created this big shift. Again, it doesn't matter to me what you think about him. And I didn't agree with all of his views, but I did believe in him speaking truth, which I thought was really excellent. So, gosh, I got sorry, something in my throat again. So typically, I'm pretty good with stuff going down. The day after his assassination, which all views are welcome on the show. My belief is that the white hats, the good folks, planned all of this, and it may seem like manipulation, yet I feel it needed to happen. I feel that he's still around. I've been working with his energy with clients the past couple of weeks. He is so excited, which is so great. Where was I going with this? That this needed to happen on any level, whether it was planned or not. And again, it can feel super manipulative. Like why is all this happening? Yeah, good. So that was what I was going to say. The day after, usually I'm pretty neutral about everything. I was so sad. Like the college students that witnessed his killing. And at the time I wasn't sure what my thoughts around it were, but I just felt all those feelings. And there was a part of me that I just didn't want to be on this earth, which I don't know about you. I know I'm supposed to be on this earth. I know I'm supposed to be a starseed. I know I'm supposed to be here. Yet it was just so overwhelming. And it took a day to get past that. But I haven't been in the depths with that. When I started finding out about the world, I had a couple of days that I was just like, you have got to be kidding, my awakening. So now I am very excited with how things are going. So I encourage anyone listening to also, and because I also believe that we are going towards goodness. I believe there's going to be this heaven and hell. I think that some people are going to stay, let's say, in the darkness, but I believe that everyone's going to ascend. So that was my take on it. What was your take on it?
Well, what's interesting too is before I get to that, when I was listening to one of your podcasts with this really interesting young guy, Liev or something.
Yes. Yeah, out of
Liev?
Canada. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it was like 2 days after or maybe the next day after the assassination, but you had recorded that. I don't know if you want to go back and listen, but you asked him about Charlie Kirk. I, do you remember that?
Really? No, I don't.
Early on in the interview, because you were talking about how they're both young and the impact and you want to
Wow.
have more young people on your show um but I was like, how'd she get this out so fast? And then I'm like, oh, he had not been
No,
assassinated yet.
because we recorded it 2 weeks earlier,
Right.
prior to.
But
Wow.
I didn't even know who Charlie Kirk was
No way.
until it happened. Somebody texted me right away and was like, "Oh my God, Charlie Kirk was assassinated." I was like, "Who's that?" Because I stay out of the news and I'm really not part of any politics like I used to be. I used to be very into politics. I
Okay.
really believed in the system
Oh
and
yeah, I feel
that it
you.
mattered,
Yeah.
and now where I am, I'm like, it doesn't matter it's just all a big orchestration.
Mhm.
There's something that's going on behind the scenes, and it doesn't matter who's in politics, but it serves to distract us. And it can, they use the emotion, they pit us against each
Yes.
other.
Oh
And
yeah.
so once you start to understand that, one response can be like, okay, I opt out. This does not get my attention anymore. So of course, I'm aware that Trump is president. Like I know the big stuff.
Yeah.
And also I don't trust the news. Like I do
Oh
not
gosh,
trust the
no.
news. So there was no, the only way that I find out about big things is somebody else has to tell me because I won't be anywhere where I'm seeking out the information. And of course, like I didn't escape that news. That was huge, huge news. But The way that I see it,
Yeah.
because I really don't have an opinion on Charlie Kirk. I could go back and look now at, and I've seen some things here and there, but I did never had an opinion on him. I didn't. I understand that he was kind of like a divisive type of personality. One thing that I hear over and over again is that he encouraged critical
Yes, he
thinking, he
did.
encouraged discourse, and this is critical.
I would
It's
agree.
critical. And if there is one good thing that comes from his assassination, it would be the highlighting of that message of we should be listening to each other even when, and maybe even especially when we don't agree.
Yes.
Because honestly, there was a time where I would have been triggered by somebody with, a flag that suggested that Trump was, breaking the matrix or whatever. I mean, honestly, that would have really triggered me because I just was deep in. Like I really
Yeah,
I trusted the news. I trusted the leaders, and I really thought
I
that
know.
it made a difference. And so being able to not only tolerate another viewpoint now, but also to learn from it and to
Mhm.
really be able to be bettered by it. So, like Charlie Kirk would not have been my person, um, the previous version of myself when I was looking for to politics to,
Yep.
as part of my identity. Um, I would have bypassed whatever message he had because it wasn't my color, and but now, he had a really, that is such an important thing. The ability for us to have open conversation, the ability for us to cultivate the ability to hear people
Yeah.
and to not necessarily have to ascribe to
Right.
or subscribe to their thoughts, to not necessarily have to adopt what they're saying, but to not feel that it's a threat to us. And that's where we are, where
Oh, yeah.
if you're not with me, you're against me. And
Hmm.
there's a whole swath of things that come with the identity of, let's just say, one party or another, because we're talking in political terms, but we could talk about that in terms of religion. We could talk about it
Hmm.
in terms of profession, even, I went to an astronomy, had the star watching thing a few days ago. And this guy, we had this scientist who was the leader, and I accidentally confused the words astrology and astronomy, and I corrected myself right away. But somebody said, "Well, what's the difference?" And he's like, "Oh my God, people who believe in astronomy, sorry, in astrology, here I am doing it again.
Oh, no.
They think that they pull up
Uh,
their horoscope in the paper and it tells them how to dictate their day." And I
yeah.
thought, "Oh my God, that is so reductionist. Like it's so reductionist." Um, but it's very, black and white.
Yes.
Astronomy is right,
Yes.
astrology is wrong. And those
Yeah.
words are very similar, but it's wrong. And this is right.
Well, it's
And
just
it's
like the meditation you were in, the initial, this is the way to do it. This is not the way to do it.
yes, right,
Yeah.
right. So and with the Charlie Kirk thing, I mean, the way that I see it is that he is a pawn in a bigger game, and it is a dark, dark game. And the point of it is for division. It
Hmm.
is to get the regular people to be doing exactly what we're talking about, where it's I'm right, you're wrong, I
Yes.
don't like you, I'm threatened by you, so I'm gonna lash out at you. And we're just seeing red, because we can't think straight because we're so triggered. And what's behind that? The media is behind that. They're picking our scabs, and you know they're framing this narrative that is exasperating these emotions because everybody is feeling emotions, and then they're just getting, like, the wounds can't heal. They just get picked and picked and picked and exacerbated. And that is what we want to be alert to,
Yes.
not the person that we see at the grocery store, not the bumper sticker, not the people that are not even the talking heads on the media. That's why I don't even engage with them. I don't even turn it on because it's like, no, you are playing a game and your game is propaganda. That is the truth. The news is propaganda, and there are forces behind the scenes, and this is behind the elected officials. This is not Democrat versus Republican.
Right.
It's beyond that, and they've got their fingers in all the pies. So no matter who is there, they win because they're backing whoever. It doesn't matter to them. But they want us focused on each other and attacking each other because that's when we're weak. That is how such a small number of people can get away with what they get away with because we're so distracted we can't see what they're doing. We won't see what they're doing. We're attacking each other because we think each other are the problem. And so that's how I see it.
Beautiful. Okay. I know you did the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind at Big Bear Mountain recently in California. So just tell me in a couple sentences if this works out, your connection to ascended beings, to ETs. When did that start?
Um, that was a big one when I had that Big Bear encounter. That was, I think that was in 2021, maybe. But I don't know when it started. I feel like in about 2020, I still was like, I didn't believe in ETs. So it was kind of slowly from there, just starting to understand that ETs they can be a component in our awakening. And then
Yeah.
um, had an experience, a psychic experience in Big Bear, where I saw something that I think was like a technology, but another time that it just made me weep, even though I don't know what it was. Um, but there have been many kind of lucid, mystical experiences that I have felt presences and seen, sometimes vaguely seen forms. And yeah, I don't know if that answers
That
the
is
question.
perfect. All right. So knowing that you're on a time schedule, I would love to go into the practice right now. All right. So what are you going to bring to us with sacred geometry?
Just be
Okay, so
practice.
sacred geometry is so special to me. And if you're not familiar with what that is, they're basically these shapes that are the foundation of reality. There are a lot of different ways to understand what reality is, but there is evidence that energetically, the energy takes on the form of shapes. And I've seen this in my own mind's eye at different times where I'm like, why would I be seeing shapes? But so anyway, the practice that I wanted to bring today is to do a little bit of research. If you're not familiar with sacred geometry, you can just do like a Google search and look at the images and see what images you're drawn to. So it might be the flower of life, the seed of life. It might be an icosahedron or a star tetrahedron, a cube. It might be a tesseract. There are all different kinds of geometries.
Okay, and there's
And
so
what you
much
can do,
sacred geometry in nature too. Like when you
yes,
start
well,
pulling up seashells and oh, it's amazing. Okay.
yes. So if you start to get into like the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, you'll see, like you said, the seashells go spiraling galaxies,
Hmm.
like I talked about earlier. They're all throughout nature. That's kind of a big joke, is like once you start to engage with sacred geometry, you start to recognize it in nature, sunflowers and this pattern, it's everywhere. But what I like to draw it. So you could seek out instruction on drawing it. I actually do have like a recorded workshop that I did last year, I think it was, and I teach different how to do it and a lot of background on it, why it's so powerful. Um, but you can draw it if you want to, or you could just print it out or purchase a print of whatever appeals to you. But I like to do an open-eyed meditation with it. And I think that is one of the big um, possibilities with sacred geometry, a nice way to be able to take it in and just kind of let it work with your energy. You're working with it if you're out in nature. You're getting it from an energetic level anyway, but it is a nice way to just again, come into awareness with this foundational aspect of creation in this realm. And so you can just take your printout or your drawing or your print and kind of hold it up like at eye level or have it displayed at eye level and let your gaze go soft. And as it goes soft, this two-dimensional drawing will start to shift and it will start to like pop out or go get some depth to it. It will just it kind of like the magic eye pictures from the 90s.
Yeah.
If you guys aren't too young to remember that, we'd have these prints and it would just look like a staticky, like how staticky TVs used to look when you, again, if you're not old enough to remember Magic Eye, you won't remember what static on a TV looked like, but where it's just this fuzzy, snowy, like picture where there's nothing in there. That's how this print would look. But if you would let your gaze soften, an image would pop out. And then it became this like, oh my God, it's dolphins jumping out of the water, and it would look 3D, and it was super cool. So the sacred geometry will start to do that, and it won't necessarily start to turn into something else, but it starts to kind of morph, and there is just magic there. So there's a certain geometry called the Sri Yantra. This is a big one in like the Himalayas area. And if you don't know those words, I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, you would recognize it if you saw it. But I've done, for about 40 days in a row, plus or minus, I didn't actually keep track, but I know it was around 40 days. I was drawing one every day, and I would look at it with a soft gaze, and it would start to pop out, and it would morph to where all these nested triangles would start to have like corridors. Like it was like a different picture would start to pop out. And it even started infiltrating my dreams. And so it's mysterious. So I don't want to be too limiting in terms of like, do this, and then this happens, and this is why. And because it's like, I can explain it in 5 different ways, but it's way beyond our human capacity. So much is going on with it. So it's one of those things of like, my invitation would just be, just engage with it, look at it, let the gaze be soft, see what happens, and then just notice, like do that as a practice for a little while, like let yourself build up a cumulative effect, and then be your own living laboratory and notice what happens within your own life, what happens with your manifestations, what happens with your intentions, what happens with your dreams, what happens with your relationships, whatever it might be. What do you notice?
Okay, I'm definitely going to do that today because I've always been drawn, but this is an area that I haven't explored. Hey, so thank you so much for that. And I will put images, and I will have already put images, so you guys will see some pieces of sacred geometry too. Okay, girl, you got to go. You have 3 minutes. Kara, is there anything else within that you want to say? I love that.
No, I think that's pretty much it. And please feel free to connect with me on Instagram's where I am most in terms of social media. That's Kara_Goodwin_meditation.
Awesome.
I'm on YouTube under Soul Elevation Podcast. My website is karagoodwin.com. And then all my podcast episodes are on soulelevationpodcast.com.
Awesome. And I'll have all your links, and I'll put your website up here. We didn't even get to talk about your book. I hope that's going well. Hey, thank you so much for being here today. And I guess that's it, girl. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eden. I've loved this conversation.
Oh, good. Me too. All right, y'all. Next week. Beep, beep. Y'all, find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, True Social, as well as Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, plus a plethora of other audio directories like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So like, subscribe, do it all. See ya.